Hey everybody, and welcome back to Game Night Date Night. I am Melanie, and this series is in contribution with Games and Couples. And Games and Couples do amazing things. They do couples counseling, but they utilize a lot of board game as a tool for couples. So either as an inexpensive, easy way to make quality time for each other, or to help them learn how to work with each other when playing a cooperative game, or how to deal with conflict resolution if you're dealing with a game that has a little bit more conflict. And to help with that is they've created a rating system. So this rating system will rate board games on three different things from 1 to 5. Keep in mind, 1 is not bad, 5 is not good. It just depends on where you are as a couple and what you need. So the first thing that they're going to rate on is conversation and connection potential. So how much opportunity is there during the gameplay to hold a conversation with your spouse? Some game has a lot of downtime. There's a lot of opportunities to have a conversation. Other games are very thinking. There's a lot of things going on that you can't really have a conversation. And depending where you are as a couple, maybe this is the time that you guys take to come together and catch up with each other on your day. And now you're looking for something that has a higher rating here. Or maybe things have been tense and things flare up easier. So you're looking for something that might not have quite so much conversation in this particular one. The second thing we rate on is on the getting to know you. How much will be revealed from your partner as you play the game? So sometimes the decisions, or you're some games will be really kind of mind reading, with a game like Codename, for example, where you're trying to give a clue and you're trying to get them to think the same way as you are. That's going to have a higher rating because you're definitely learning on how they think and how they view things. While other one is you do your thing over there, I do my thing over here. We compare score at the end. So that's not going to be quite as revealing. And the last thing that we rate the game on is potential for hurt feelings and conflict. Let's face it, most board games have one winner, so that means there's a loser. And depending on how the game goes about that, there might be a lot of opportunities for some games can be a little bit more take that, where you're sabotaging the other player, which could potentially create opportunities for hurt feelings and conflict to be happening. While some games, like co-op games, where everybody's working together towards the same role, has a lower risk of that. So every week we talk about a different game, go through the rating system for games, of potential games that couples could play. This every month as well, I try to have a bit of a theme, and this month I picked games that utilizes dice in an unusual way. So the first game that we're going to talk about this month is Sagrada. So let's have a look at the rating first of all. So conversation and connection potential, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. So with Sagrada, you have this grid. It starts empty, and every round you're going to draft a couple of dice to add to your grid. You're putting together a stained glass. That's the theme. Now, there are rules to follow. You cannot have the same color sharing a side with the same color. And you can't have the same number of pip next to the same number of pips. So if you have a 5 orange, that can't be next to another orange or another dice that is a 5. So it gets a little puzzly, and as your stained glass fills in, it gets a little bit tricky as well. So I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5 for conversation. So there is some opportunity to hold a conversation, but depending on how filled up your board is, you might be too busy trying to figure out where a dice can fit in, that it kind of does take away on some of the conversation. For getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 1 out of 5. You are not even looking at what they're doing on their board. You're concentrating on your own stained glass. And so there's very little to kind of learn. It's like, oh, you're really doing that? Because you're really not paying attention to that. You're too busy on your own. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. It is frustrating if you really needed a 3 and the 3 is there, but it's not your turn yet. You got to wait till you can draft, and then they draft a 3. Now you don't have a 3. So that can happen, which could flare up some emotions a little bit. But other than that, you're working on your own board, they're working on their own board. There's no player interaction. They're not going to be able to mess up your board of what you've created after the fact, other than drafting dice you were hoping to get. So this is what the box looks like. It's gorgeous. And then you have the board. So you have these cards that'll slide into the board, and there's different difficulty level that'll have like some rules. So you notice in the top corner there, that's yellow. So that means the dice that goes there is going to have to be yellow. And then you see some of the grayed out ones, and you see one has to have a 6, one has to have a 5. So it kind of creates extra rules that you're going to have to follow. And this is the scoring board, so you're going to be keeping track of your score. On the other side of that one, before the end of the game, is where you put the extra dice. So every round, every player drafts 2 dice, and there's 1 extra dice that gets put up there, and that's the round tracker. But it's also dice that potentially could be available to you to trade off if you need to later on, depending on the special abilities that are available. Each player also has a different set of rules they're trying to do to score extra points. So it could be that for every combination of number 5 and number 1 dice you have on your board, you would score extra. So you're going to try to get for those numbered pips a little bit more if you can. Great game. This is one that would be called an abstract strategy game. And it's just really pretty to play, so it has great table presence, and that's, the making of a fun night. The second game we talked about this month was Steampunk Rally. Steampunk Rally is created by Roxley, which is local to Alberta, and it's just a really good game, and there's a lot of dice in this game as well, which is so satisfying. So first, let's start by looking at the rating system. So conversation and connection potential, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. So in this game, this is another drafting game where you're going to be drafting cards. So each round you're going to have 4 cards, and in these cards, you're going to have to decide if you want to add the card to your machine that you're creating for the race, because this is a racing game, or if you want to discard the card to obtain the dice or the gear that is available, or if there's a special ability. So there's some decisions to be made here. Once you've put everything together, you also need to decide where you're going to place your dice after they've been rolled. And then, so there's a little bit of steps where there's some decisions that needs to be made. So what I find when that happens in a game, if you're having a conversation, that comes to an end as you're making these decisions. So there will be some opportunities to have a conversation, but it's going to be interrupted with all these decision making that's going to be happening. So I'm giving that one a 3 out of 5. In the getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5 as well. It is interesting to see how they're putting together their machine, and as they're going through the race, because as you're going through the race, you'll be hitting some terrain that have rougher terrain, so it's going to create some stress on your machine, and you keep track of that. And if you're not able to mitigate that, then it's going to break off some parts of your machine. Now, I've played with people that play it that way and then just accumulate as much as they can, don't worry about the terrain, and then just break everything off. The benefit of doing that sometimes is all the dice that goes on your machine also has to be vented out to remove. So if you've activated, so I'm going to activate this one, which allows me to move 2 spots, so I'm going forward in the race, that dice stays there until you're able to remove it. Now, you can spend gears to vent those dice, but 1 gear will vent 2 pips. So if it's a 6, that's mean you're going to have to spend 3 gears in the end to be able to remove that dice completely. It might be worthwhile to just break that piece off. So it's interesting to see how your partner is going to make those decisions and what their machine's going to look like, how the race is going to go. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. You're mostly concentrating on your own machine going through the race. They're doing their own machine going through the race, but there is the opportunity sometime to add extra rough terrain on different path that your partner might be going. So that, you're going and taking this shortcut, which has a bit of rough terrain. Well, I'm going to add extra rough terrain there, and then you're going to have to break off some of your machine. So if that happens, it could flare up some some conflict a little bit. So this is what the game looks like. This is a picture of the machine put together, and you notice there's some dice on each part of the cards. And then the way that you put the machine, they have to have a connection, and everything has to kind of go back to the cockpit. It's just so satisfying to build that machine as you play. And then this is a picture of the board that you're racing. So the board, you'll kind of combine 6 tiles to create the board. There's 8 tiles total, I believe, so it changes up every time, and they're double-sided, so you can play on the one side, you can play on the other side. This one has gaps and holes that you have to jump over, so it's interesting. And then this is just a picture of the whole thing. So you have the red dice, the yellow dice, and the blue dice that you'll be collecting. And the red dice are the combustion, the yellow dice is electricity, and then the blue dice is steam, and those are different fuels that you can utilize to activate your machine, and depending on what you have in your machine, what type of dice they're going to require. Very fun, so satisfying to play, and that was Steampunk Rally. Then the next game we talked about is La Granja. So the ones I have in this picture here is the original version. La Granja was just reprinted with the deluxe version that is absolutely stunning. But the gameplay is amazing even with the original version. So rating wise, conversation, connection, potential, I'm giving this one a 3 out of 5. There are some decisions that needs to be made, but once you've decided what you want to do with your card, it's a little bit more following through with your plan, so there is some opportunities to hold a conversation then. Getting to know you, I'm giving this one a 4 out of 5. There is a lot of interesting decisions you're going to be making on this one. Each cards can be used in 4 different ways. Are you going to get your worker and activate a special ability, or are you going to slide it on the side of your player board on this side so that you can add fields and things to your farm, or are you going to do it on the other side so you can get more pigs possibly or more income for your farm, or are you going to utilize the top of the card and slide it on top so that you can go to the market and sell some of your goods, and depending on what is being sold, what you get as reward. And then if you do that as well, you get to take your cube and put the cube into the main board with the village, and depending on where you put it and the value of it, so if I put a value of 4 cube into the village, I get to remove all the other players' cubes that have a lower value. And that round of each round, those cubes score for points, so that's important to know. So with that card, lots to consider, but afterwards but yeah, so verifying what your partner is going to decide, what they're going to concentrate on doing. Are they concentrating on the field? Are they concentrating on the market? There's a lot. And then also, you can also deliver your goods either to fulfill your orders or to exchange and place, your goods onto the main board, where if you have the majority and it gets all filled in, you get some points and you get special abilities as well. There's a lot of different things that can be done. It also has a really neat action selection, because you have all of these dice that are being played, and once you've decided what you're going to do with your card, you roll all the dice, and then the numbers that is on the dice are the actions available. So, and then you kind of put them on the side of the board indicating what action is available. So the number 1 action is it allows you to get a pig. So if there's no number 1 dice, you're not getting a pig this round. If there's only one number 1 dice, if nobody uses it, you could get that pig, but maybe somebody else uses it before you get to it. But you really wanted the money, so are you going to use the money dice, hoping that the pig dice is going to remain? And maybe the money dice actually was like number 4, and then you ended up rolling 3 number 4. So there's a lot of money to be collected this round. So they have all of that dice selection that's very interesting. So just lots of information, lots of decision, and it's just neat to see how the other player is going to play. Hurt feelings and conflict, I'm giving this one a 2 out of 5. Yes, with the dice, depending if they select what you were hoping for, could create a bit of conflict there. And especially in the village, if they place their cubes to remove yours and it removes some of your points, that can happen. But the majority of the game happens on your own player board and nobody else has any effect on that. So this is what the original box looked like. And here's the game. I really like how the player board has these cutouts and then you slide the cards underneath and it shows just the action you're activating. That is very satisfying and it looks so good. Here's a bit of a close-up on that. So that's your farm and that's where you're going to be kind of doing the main of the bulk of your actions. And then the next game that we talked about this month is Boggle. So Boggle has a lot of dice, but now we're looking at letters on the dice. This is a noisy game because when you take a thing, you have your tray, you have all the dice, you put the lid on it, you turn it upside down and you shake it, and that's where it gets noisy. Then you kind of shake till it's all placed. You lift the lid and then you have the time of the timer to try and find as many words as you can in this dice combination. My parents would play this game so much while I was growing up, and when we got old enough to partake, we would join, and honestly, we didn't really get to score just because they would get 20 words to our 2, but it was so satisfying if we came up with the word that they didn't, because if you did, it crosses off their word, it crosses off your word as well. So we're more playing like the kids had the handicap and we're removing some odd words here and there. But it was still very satisfying and I loved playing Boggle with my family. So conversation and connection potential, 1 out of 5. You are not going to be able to hold a conversation because as you're shaking and you lift and you have the timer and the whole thing you're doing is staring at those dice, writing the letters, the words you can spot, trying to come up with as many words as you can. And then after you've done that, you just list all your words, debate whether or not it is a word, and then kind of be like, oh, not cross it off, I got that one. Oh, no, I got that one, cross it off. Say, oh, I didn't get that one. And depending on how many letters in that word, how many points it's worth. In this one in the picture, it's a 4x4, so you would have to have letters that starts with three letters or more, and then there'd be 1 point, and then the more letters, more points they'd be worth, and then you kind of calculate how many points you got after each round. Getting to know you, 4 out of 5. It's just so funny to see the words they come up with. Now, when I would play with my brother, we always play with the dictionary right next to us because I think he just makes up words. And there's like, he'll come up with something, he's like, that's not a word. He's like, yeah, it's a word. He's like, oh, pull out the dictionary and verify if it's in there, and then if it isn't, there's a... And sometimes he's just as shocked as I am. He's like, oh my God, it was a word. So it's interesting to see what they'll come up with, or if they see the same thing as you do. You know, sometimes you'll have a list of 20 and they've knocked down 18 words. It's like, how do you see everything I see? Hurt feelings and conflict, 2 out of 5. You both have the same information, trying to find the same words. You'll cross each other out. It can be a little frustrating if one person is more wordsy and have a wider vocabulary than the other, because then it's harder to compete. And honestly, my family doesn't like to play with me very much because I played this so much as a kid that I spot words a lot faster than they do normally. So that could happen. This is a version of the Boggle that I have, so it's the big Boggle, and it has a 5x5 grid, so you get more letters, more opportunities to find words. I don't know if the timer is the same amount of time. I've never checked it, but you still kind of go with a timer, find as many words as you can. It is so fun. Just another picture of the game I'll put together. And then this is a picture of how it works. So when you're looking for your words, you cannot use the same letter twice. You also have to go from one letter to another that is touching or sharing a corner as the other one. So in this one, they found the word right, so W-R-I-T-E, because you could do the line. You wouldn't have been able to jump, and go Twix, T-W-I-X, which I don't know would have counted because that's a name brand, so it wouldn't have counted anyways, but it's just so satisfying. Looking at that, you can see hat. That would be a word that you would get. What else is there? Ref. Now, ref for referee. Is that allowed? Depends on what the dictionary would say. Just such a satisfying game. Played this one tons as a kid. I still own it. It doesn't get to the table quite as much just because my family gets frustrated playing with me. But when I get a couple of words game playing with some friends, this one is one that I like to pull out. So that was it for the games we talked about this month. Be sure to follow us on Instagram. My Instagram is Mel's_boardgame_room, and we also have games and couples. On Facebook, my Facebook page is Mel's Board Game Room, and we also have games and couples love in the age of board game. And the YouTube channel is Mel's Board Game Room and games and couples love in the age of board games. Bye, everybody.